Here at Fit to Fight. I just got done training with an intense training session with Mike VanBeek of Focus JKD Counterviolence. I haven't been training for a while, and he really showed me what it is, that force on force, the violence, how it applies to a realistic situation. I've been training with a lot of people and I highly recommend him, and I'm going to continue training on with him, and for several reasons. I prepared a number of questions here for him, and we'll go from here.
Mike, thanks for coming out, brother. I appreciate your time. It was good to see you. Nice training. You did great, brother. You did great.
Thank you. So first question I have for you, sir, is explain to us why the name Focus JKD Counterviolence.
The name is, I think counterviolence is the evolution of self-defense, Mike. And when I say that, when you watch the news, when you think of self-defense, you think of some guy grabbing your wrist, or you think of an altercation at the bar. When I think of violence, I think of someone with no regard for their own safety, who doesn't care if they're going to jail, and is bent on your destruction, and doesn't, you know, the guy who's been in jail and thinks you somehow hurt his lifestyle, so when he gets out, he's been thinking for 3 years of how he's going to destroy you. So there's a more of a mental approach to it in terms of why I call it counterviolence, because I want to bring the reality of self-defense, of what's existing now. And let's face it, we're in Chicago, one of the most violent cities in the country, and you know, you have to be prepared. And so being prepared for violence is a step up from being prepared for self-defense.
Thank you. What is your experience in violent situations?
Man, you know, I went down a dark path, Mike, and there was a time in my life for a good five to almost 7, 8 years where I lived on the streets, and for, you know, I was, wouldn't say I was a criminal, but I was around a lot of criminals, and I did some things that, while I'm not proud of, I'm not ashamed of them, and I was fortunate enough to come out of that time in my life with some intelligence, and that intelligence is violence. And so, you know, from bullets, from knives, from just being around people who were criminal-minded, violent-minded people, who needed to rob and steal and do things just to survive. And so being in that environment, or just being Caucasian on the south side of Chicago, looking like I do, promoting violence, let's go get this guy, you know, kind of thing. So my first-hand experience of violence, while it wasn't pretty, and you don't always win, it's a different feel. My life of martial arts and a cage fight was a little different. And when my experience of violence, I realized this isn't what it was like in martial arts. It was a little different.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Next question is, tell us why martial arts doesn't work and might even get you killed.
I'm not saying martial arts doesn't work, but I think martial arts was designed for, you know, being able to save your life in a self-defense situation. And what I think the training methods are so, they're more surrounded around keeping the art pure, or their priorities are a little different other than saving lives. And so, and because those instructors are a little absent from what violence is really like, they're learning how to defend an art against an art. And so if you have to train your art against someone trying to hurt you, someone trying to be not fast and not crazy, but do it in a replicating manner of violence, or else what happens is that you're prepared, you're thinking that a violent situation is going to happen this way, like it does in your martial arts class, and when it doesn't, you kind of crumble into this self-preservation fetal position.
Yes.
And so I think it's in the training. The training methods are skewed, that's why.
Can you share any stories of your students who have successfully protect themselves from violent encounters?
Yeah, that's a good question. You know, my students are great people, first and foremost, and great characters. So they don't really put themselves in front of the gun. But I have gotten several phone calls throughout my career since I started counterviolence from people who have taken our programs. And our programs are what we really base the counterviolence off of. You know, not just our people who come every day, our students, but what we can give people in the 6 to 8 hour programs. And I've had several phone calls from people's women's husbands, men themselves, where, you know, it's cool when you go into a cage and you fight and you do cool stuff and you show people cool things. That's cool. But when you get that phone call thanking you for saving their life, and hey, my kids, I'm thanking you for my kids because their mom is still there, and wow, that's rewarding.
Absolutely.
That's rewarding.
What are some mistakes that disables people from using martial arts in a violent situation?
Just like I said before, is that they're not confronted with that. Everybody walks up and they're doing this, or they just say, hey, come lay with me on the ground and let's roll. Or no one walks up and grabs you, punches you. And even if I did it slowly and I said, oh, but I pushed you first, or we got up and I was really trying to hit you instead of pulling short, and I really do think the secret of training is in the training method. Not so much what you're doing, but what you're doing it against.
Right.
Mike. So are you doing it against someone trying to hit you and hurt you, or are you just doing it against your own style?
Right, exactly. What advice would you give to students to prevent violence, to disable violence?
Intercept it. Learn when there's a violence. Learn when you see something. Don't be so like what I call the Cobra Kai of today. People, these young martial artists, are always out looking to prove themselves. They want to beat down the world to prove to themselves how good they are. But most people who have self-confidence, who recognize a violent situation and can intercept it before it happens. You're like, you know, hey, I see this guy's drunk, and I don't want any part of that with, you know, whatever situation it is. So people not putting themselves in front of the gun. That's what I recommend the most to intercept violence. Is don't put yourself in that position.
Okay. What skill sets would you recommend to a new person just starting off?
Feet work, or footwork. Yeah, move. If you don't want to be hit, don't be there. So we have 3 guiding principles in countering the DNA of violence, and that is it. Protect yourself at all times. Don't do this, don't do this, don't do this. Put your hands by your head, first and foremost. Protect yourself. And the second one is movement. You have to move. If you don't move, it's your sitting target. Move, head work, feet work, bob. Always move. Back yourself up. Change your back so your back's never against the same spot. Always be moving. Now when you apply your techniques, tactics, or fighting skills, it's going to be done out of motion. And that makes it possible to counter violence more appropriately.
Right on. The vast majority of men, they carry a knife nowadays. What are your views on it and how it changes a fight?
I think it really gives you, I think a knife is a great equalizer. You don't have to, I mean, as long as you don't get it taken away, I don't recommend throwing knives. I mean, it is your weapon. I don't know why you throw it, but I think it's a great equalizer, especially against mass attack. And the 3 hallmarks of violence are weapons, mass attack, and violence is unexpected and unprovoked. It comes out of nowhere. And so that's different than MMA or wartime. You expect to be shot at in war, and you expect this guy in the cage to hit you. So going with those 3 principles of violence, that DNA of violence, it tells us that if I have a blade on me, and I tell all my women and all my self-defense women workshop, carry a knife. Get used to pulling that out and defending yourself against 2 people. It changes when someone's arm opens up and you see they see the inside of their own arm. They change their priorities really quickly.
Absolutely, absolutely. How do you train to avoid firearms from getting shot?
Dodge. Duck, dodge. So move, yeah. Change your angle zone. You know, even if you're being shot at from the back zone, you got to change your angles. So just like I said about when you don't have empty hands, move. Move. Don't be a sitting target. So if you see someone going to acquire a weapon, if you're within 17 feet, you rush them. If you're beyond, you duck, you move, you run. Okay? Start counting shots. All right?
There you go. How do you train for realistic mass attacks?
By training it in this gym. By always, and you experienced that today.
Yes.
While you were out there doing a boxing drill, I shot in from the side. So you have to change your angle, you have to move. Always include mass attacks from the very beginning that person walks in the door.
I agree. That's a good thing. How do you help your students to get to the point psychologically to train for violence?
Right from the door to learn to download. We call it the downloading process, so that you don't get caught up thinking, and when you start to think, you become flat-footed. So Bunch is always getting them moving on their toes, getting used to, or as we call it, being desensitized to violence. And how do I do that? By constantly throwing punches at their face, trying to take them down. When they're desensitized to it, they can make better approaches and let that it come out. They can make better decisions about that.
I agree. What aspect of fitness do you think is the most important factor in a life or death situation?
How was it for you today? Conditioning, yeah?
Conditioning, right.
There you go. So you got to move around. You got to spend 3 to 5 minute rounds with someone trying to hit you, and then you take, even if you're just doing, let's say, a trap, boom, you spend 3 to 5 minutes in a round, working around, jab, jab, then trap, and then whatever flows from there. So conditioning and functional training.
Absolutely. And can you... We'll go right here. I understand you are a counter-violence specialist.
Yeah.
Well, what can a person do to actually be someone to earn?
That's a good question. The counter-violence specialist is somebody who's already a martial arts instructor. So if you have, say you're a JKD instructor or whatever, and you're interested in listening, I'm not really teaching competition. I'm not teaching this branch of one-step sparring kind of training. To be a counter-violence specialist, you already have to be a martial artist. It's like being a surgeon. You have to first be a doctor, and a brain surgeon, and whatever. Okay. Same thing here. To be a counter-violence specialist, you have to learn how the process, the DNA of violence happens, and then learn the algorithm the patterns of predictability in violence. Okay, so there's social things, there's studying, there's work that has to be done. So if you're interested in doing some counterviolence work with Focus, just go ahead and check out our Facebook page, Focus JKD Counterviolence, and drop me a line. We'll take it from there.
Thank you very much,
Mike. Thanks a lot, brother.
Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it. We'll see you soon.